Well, g'day everyone, and welcome to yet another review on a cheaply priced, social media marketed, Chinese-made trimmer head. Today's candidate is the 6 knife, or so it says, wire trimmer head. Now, this is a variation on probably the most well-known cheap trimmer head, but instead of using a whole heap of wire bundles, this time we only have 6. The ad also contains helpful but somewhat rudimentary instructions as to how you'd mount this up. And as usual, I've bought it off eBay for a price less than 20 Australian dollars, including shipping. And looking at the ad here, apparently you also have the option to purchase one with only 3 so-called knives. The knives really being twisted strands of mild steel. Yes, it does rust eventually. The package arrived in 7 days, so let's get the removable shaft off my Stihl trimmer and mount it up. So normally on a trimmer, if you took your regular head off, you'd probably have something like this. Spline washer, this sort of cup retainer head and the nut, left-hand thread. And what do we get with this? Just the product itself. Nothing to help mount it up. No instructions as to which way it goes. You can see it sort of curves down, so I'm thinking maybe it can be mounted facing down, but we'll have to see. It does sit on that washer. So will it go straight on? Well, we can put that there. I guess we could mount this upside down, but okay, that fits in there. And our cup head, one thing you may have just noticed as well, I mean, how small is that compared to the guard? So the RPMs aren't going to be nearly as great at the cutting tip. It's almost a miniature version. Can we improve things if we... So this cup here, you can see if I mount it on, it doesn't really want to... We'll want to walk around, which isn't such a problem because this at least is retained. I suppose they are wire. They will shift over time, so I think we'll try simply mounting it up like this. Let's have a look at our nut here. How much purchase are we going to get? We're going to get a reasonable amount of threads. Not quite to the top, but possibly enough. I'm going to try and nip this up and see if it's something that I'm willing to have a go with. Alright, so I've torqued that down. That's at least 2/3 of the way into the thread, so I'm pretty happy, especially being that, remember, these are reverse threaded, so as you torque up the machine, it's going to tighten the nut. I'm willing to give that a try, but yeah, just the shortness of it, it's almost as if, truth be told, it's almost as if it's something that you'd want to put, well, I don't know why you would, but something that would fit onto a grinder head. As always, we've got safety instruction here. Well, hang on a second, that is a grinder head. Look at that little, that is a grinder. U-wire trimmer head indeed. Now, oddities on the packaging aside, the attachment did pass the test of mounting straight up to my trimmer, which is more than can be said for some others. So, it was time to head down the back and see how it performed. The first thing to try was some trimming along a timber retaining wall. Now this was performed well, and the short radius of the head did allow me to get further into some of these tighter spaces. This 90-degree corner, for example. Then it was time to trim along this fence, but as you can see, if your fence is in any better condition than mine, you wouldn't want to use it, as it strips the paint right off. Then onto some edging against this concrete block, which it handled all right. The head itself is somewhat lightweight and spins up okay, but not as easily as your typical line. Of course, it's heavier than that. So there we have 3 tasks that almost anyone with any lawn is going to have to do. The head handles the grass cutting part easily, but remember, it's far from gentle. So now out the back gate and into some conditions faced by those on larger blocks. First, trimming around this rubble. The conforming nature of the wire means I can go up against these bricks here without having to worry about smacking, say, a solid blade into them, sending bits of clay flying all over the place. Then it was time to mow down some slightly woodier and taller weeds on uneven ground. As you can see, the head makes light work of this material, and also seems to be pretty resistant to getting clogged up with tall grass. So now, as with all the heads I test, it was time to get into that pest of a weed, Lantana. With thick, shrubby stems and bushy foliage, Lantana sits annoyingly between a job for a brush cutter and one for a chainsaw. But the trimmer head cracked in, breaking down the smaller stems and mulching what was already on the ground. Gaining confidence, I then moved to trying to saw through some of the larger stems. As you can see, this is something that this head will do, although I think we're definitely pushing the boundaries. Following this clearing, however, it was time to check and see how the head had stood up. Now, there definitely had been some loosening of the individual strands, but it didn't yet seem like any breakage had occurred, and it was still performing well. So, lastly, I set about using it to clear this hillside, which is too steep for a mower and gets overgrown. Okay, so that's one session with a 6-wire trimmer. I mean, yes, we've cleared a bit, but haven't really finished what I would have liked to have done. Did have a bit of a session with that Lantana, but let's have a look at what's happening with the wheel, because I was starting to get some vibrations, some bad vibrations, and if we inspect what we can see, I don't know if you can see it there, but the individual strands have started to break off. And this one's obvious because it's been shortened, but right at the hub, a lot of them have broken off from one side, and that's what's unbalanced the head and put those vibrations through the whole trimmer. And I mean, once you get those vibrations, it's not only hard on the equipment, but it's not that pleasant to use yourself, because the thing's just vibrating your hands off. So there we have it. The 6-strand wire trimmer. Yes, it will work. And I think, yes, if you keep yourself to smaller things to cut, it will last longer than it has for me. But, well, the minute you try and go through anything a bit more woody, well, that will be the end of it. So there we go.